When we when we are engaged by a client to implement an offshore trust for them, we provide them with a detailed federal tax compliance memorandum document, which is about 28 pages long for their accountant, so nobody gets in trouble. We've seen time and time and time again that newer lawyers who purport to do this type of planning do not provide federal tax advice to their clients, which is malpractice at the very least.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of legal fields and jurisdictions because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Howard Rosen of the eponymous law firm that bears his name. That's Dunleavy, Rosen and Rosen. We're going to jump over and see his website here in a minute. Howard, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good, Justin.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to join with me today. This is his website. It's a really clever URL, protectyou.com, because what they are set up to do is to protect you. Protect You is a comprehensive resource for individuals and professionals seeking information and strategies for safeguarding assets from potential legal threats, creditors, and unforeseen liabilities. The site offers practical guidance, legal insights, and proven offshore and domestic asset protection planning solutions tailored to preserve wealth and maintain privacy. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Patrick runs the firm with his wife, Patricia.
Howard.
I'm sorry?
Howard.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I saw Patricia and that short-circuited my brain. I even was even looking at your name. The wrong word came out. That happens sometimes. That's life. We run with it. We're live. That's how it is. I know this is Howard. I even see his name under his thing. I just totally brain fog. But there we go. Sorry about that, Howard. Howard runs the firm with his wife, Patricia Dunleavy Rosen. And again, that is protectyou.com. As always, we will have a link in the description below so that you can reach out to them. You can visit protectyou.com. Really easy to remember URL. And of course, you can give them a call at 305-447-0061 or go online and fill out their contact form. And we'll have, again, all of that information down below. Before we begin, I'm going to read from one of our sponsors. Our sponsor today is Groove Funnels. Listen up, entrepreneurs and dream chasers. If you're running an online business, that doesn't mean you have to be drowning in subscriptions or juggling a tangled tech stack. Groove.cm is offering a limited time deal that is too good to ignore. Get 30 days completely free and then lock in your first full year for just $2.99. That's less than what most people pay for a month of the other services, and this is an all-in-one done-for-you sort of service. Build stunning websites with Groove pages, launch high-converting funnels, run email campaigns, manage e-commerce stores, and even start your own affiliate program all in one spot. No more Frankensteining tech stacks, no more monthly billing chaos. Over 1 million users have already joined the movement, saving thousands and scaling faster with Groove's all-in-one powerhouse platform that replaces tools like Shopify, ClickFunnels, MailChimp, and more. There's no risk, there's no contracts, just results. Try it free for 30 days and then pay only $2.99 for your entire first year, only if you love it. This offer will not last forever, so please don't miss your shot to simplify your systems and scale like never before. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up today for free and get started. I don't think you even need a credit card to get started. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. Our second sponsor at the top of the hour is Habanero Social. What if Google could send you free clients every single month? Well, with Habanero Social, it's not fantasy, it's reality. Habanero Social is an AI-powered platform that optimizes your Google business profile to attract more local customers effortlessly. From cranking out high-quality content to managing reviews and fine-tuning your local SEO, Habanero Social handles it all for you while you sit back and watch your business grow. 85% of local searches happen within that Google Maps pack. It's the place you need to be to capture those clients. And an optimized Google business profile doesn't just show up. It engages and it builds trust. It increases clicks and ultimately boosts your business. And that's why Habanero Social is so confident that what they do will work, that they offer you a 3 times ROI guarantee. If you don't make at least 3 times more than you spend with them, they will work for free or refund your money, whatever it takes to make it right. So stop wasting time on old school tactics. Visit habanerosocial.com today and let the AI do the heavy lifting for you. That's habanerosocial.com. Alrighty, so again, I am joined with Howard Rosen, and that is Howard. He is a partner over at Dunleavy Rosen & Rosen, which is a boutique Miami-based law firm recognized for its focus on offshore asset protection planning. He's AV preeminent rated through Mark Hubble. He's a certified public accountant. Howard brings decades of experience in advanced asset protection, taxation, and estate planning. Since being admitted to the Florida bar in 1974, he has advised clients on complex domestic and international planning, corporate structuring, and tax-related matters. Howard has authored and co-authored numerous influential publications, including Asset Protection, A Guide for Professionals, and the BNA Tax Management Portfolio on Asset Protection Planning. He also is a sought-after speaker, having lectured internationally and served as an adjunct professor at the University of Miami School of Law for nearly 2 decades. Highly regarded by his peers, Howard is frequently called upon as an asset protection expert witness. So I am very pleased to be joined by Howard, and that was a lot to say just to introduce you, but I'm sure I missed some of the most important things. So Howard, my very first question to you as always is, what did I miss?
What did you miss? There's I can't remember what my bio says. I haven't looked at it lately, but no, I think you pretty much covered the important stuff. I was first a CPA, and I loved it while I was in school. I loved taking the courses. And then as soon as I started doing it for a living, I said, "Oh no, I cannot do this for a living." And so it took a while, to get into law school, and I ended up going to law school. I keep my CPA license active because it was the hardest one to get, but I only do accounting for myself. And the irony of all of this is that every day now I spend several hours on accounting for us, for our law firm and our businesses, and I could never get away from it. So there you go.
Well, it's good that you have that hat and you can wear it when you need it, I guess, which is
Yeah,
important.
there you go. Yeah.
Well, give me a quick pitch for your firm. Obviously, I went over some of it in the pre-roll there, but tell me about your firm. Why do people choose ProtectYou.com? Who comes to you? Who do you work with? And what do you really offer them?
Okay, our firm is actually a national practice. We have, like you mentioned before, a boutique practice, a small practice, but it's nationwide. And we've been doing offshore-based asset protection planning exclusively for more than 33 years. No one else out there can say that. There's a lot of newcomers who think they want to be asset protection attorneys, but we are constantly shocked at what we see in terms of the documents they produce, et cetera. One young fellow, uh, the typical asset protection trust will have an offshore trustee company and an offshore protector company or a protector. And the protector's job in an offshore trust is to be able to remove and replace the trustee with or without cause. It's a check and balance arrangement. Maybe we'll get into it a little more later, but the documents that this young fellow prepared allowed the trustee to remove the protector and the protector to remove the trustee. So I guess it was who got there first. So it was kind of, it's an example of what we see out there.
Sounds
So
like it's almost like a what they call a
yeah,
Mexican standoff or whatever.
yeah, exactly. So we represent clients, like I said, all across the United States and outside the United States. And the makeup of our clientele has changed over the years. Initially, when we first started doing this, we would see a lot of doctors. Okay, they were concerned with malpractice matters. But over the years, we find that we have very few new doctor clients, and most of our clients are business people, and very often someone who has sold a business, monetized the business, got a big chunk of money, and wants to avoid what we coined the post-sale price reduction, where the buyer runs the business into the ground a year later and wants some of the money back. If those proceeds are properly protected, there won't be any refund to the buyer. Okay,
Gotcha.
so we see a lot of people who sell businesses.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. And I'd never heard of that until we talked the other day. I mean, it makes sense that people would, I guess, come back and haggle and say, oh, maybe you didn't give me what you promised, which I assume is part of what it is. Like, oh, this business doesn't work nearly as well as you said it was. I want some of my money back. Or
Always the case, no matter who it is, large and small.
that's I mean, that's not funny, but it's funny in its own
It's the way it
idiosyncratic
is.
way.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you this, Howard, just to kind of get a little bit more of your backstory. What got you into law? Now, you clearly started off doing CPA work, like you said. So law wasn't your initial love. What led you into law? And then obviously what led you ultimately to focusing on asset protection as your specialty?
Okay, well, the epiphany moment was, as I said, I was working as a CPA,
Hmm.
and it was December 31st of some year, a long time ago. And my boss says, you have to be at such and such client tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I go, it's New Year's Day. He says, we have to do an inventory. And I go, that's it. I can't do this anymore. So that was the epiphany moment. And I originally thought I would go into securities law. For
Hmm.
some reason, it interested me. But by the time I started law school, I never took one securities law course, only tax courses. So, in fact, nowadays, if you were to start law school, you would not be able to take all of the tax courses that I was able to take. They reserve those now for the post juris doctor law students. In other words, someone who's already got a law degree can then take those, tax courses. But I
The
took,
graduate level of
yeah, graduate tax courses in law school. I was able to take 10 tax courses while I was in the regular law school. And and I started out being a tax lawyer, and people kept saying to me, well, I see you can save me tax when I die. I was doing estate planning, conventional estate planning. But what can you do for me now? What can you do to help me keep my assets now? And that evolved into what Patricia and I do today, help people keep what they have, protect their assets from claims of any kind.
I like that. We help you keep what you have. I mean,
Yeah,
that says what it does right there on the 10, right?
right on. Right.
Hence the website, Protect You, or We Protect You. I think you have both of those,
We have
if I recall.
weprotectyou.com also, yes.
It's a clever name. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and in the early days of the internet, very early days, um, there was no Google, there was Yahoo.
Yep.
And you could just submit pages to them and they would just list them. So
Yep.
if you did a search for asset protection, the first 20 things that would come up would be us.
Wow.
Those were the days.
Well done. I mean, as somebody who makes his living in the digital space myself, I can appreciate that. And that was before my time. I mean, I was early to the search engine game, but I mean, I wasn't working in the pre-Google era. I remember Google becoming a thing. So
Right.
I remember when it wasn't a thing. I remember asking Jeeves. My first email, I think, was a Lycos mail, right? So I remember all the awkward searches that didn't work well and everything else. And Google, say what you will about them, they do what they do well when it comes to search engine,
Sure.
finding what you need. They're the information superhighway, right? Get you from point A to point B. But yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome that you've been doing this
It
so
was
long.
it was wonderful back then.
It was the wild, wild west back then too. I
Yeah.
mean, it really was. It
Yeah.
was a gold rush. I mean, hence the .com boom and bust and everything else. Well, let
Yeah.
me ask you this. This is a super, super important question. I need you to take this question very seriously, Howard. Who is your favorite fictional attorney?
Fictional attorney.
Do you have one? Did you grow up watching
You know
Perry
what?
Mason? Do you like Atticus Finch? My cousin Vinny?
I actually avoid watching lawyer TV shows. For some reason, I don't like I watch the medical shows, but I
That's
don't
fair.
I don't watch the lawyer shows, but I used to watch Perry Mason back in the day.
Okay.
And sometimes I have him on my Paramount Plus account, I guess, Perry Mason. And I watch some shows there, but rarely because it's just not real life.
There you go.
I
Well,
don't really know much about going to court anyway. So
no, that's fine. I was just curious because I find different attorneys have very different perspectives. Some are like, "That's my job. I don't want to take my job home. That's not what I watch." But some are like, "Oh, I love a good law drama," or I grew up watching My Cousin Vinny," or whatever it was. I was just curious. That's one of my favorite questions to ask. So let me ask you this then. And we talked about this a little bit in the pre-roll, and you might kind of stumble around to answer this question, but I'm still going to go ahead and ask it to you. Um, I'm a firm believer that you step up to bat 1,000 times, eventually you're gonna swing and you're gonna miss, even if it's a little thing. But all failure ultimately is just a slow burn win as long as you learn something from it. So, is it possible, Howard, that you can think back to a time at some point in your career where you experienced a failure, but what did you learn from it? It may just be that December 31st phone call. It was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But what's one time in your legal career where you experienced some sort of a setback, some sort of a failure, things didn't go the way you expected, or whatever happens to be? What did you learn from that? And how do you carry that forward to make sure you're always giving the best care to your clients?
I wouldn't call it my failure, but it was a time when we changed the way we structure things. In the early days, we would structure our offshore-based protection plans with, the offshore trust owning a limited liability company or a partnership here in the United States that the client could then have their hands on their money. Okay. Um, Probably, I don't know why we did that, but it was easier for the client to accept, probably. That's why we
Mhm.
did it. And we would always tell the clients that if a problem arose, they had to loop us in very quickly because we would probably have to liquidate that US based entity into the offshore trust. So we had a client call us one day. He says, yeah, I'm getting sued. What should I do? I said, we should liquidate the partnership right away and move it into the offshore trust. He says, I'll get back to you. Next thing I know, time passes. He doesn't get back to us. He gets back to us one day saying, okay, I want to do it now, but I have this restraining order that's been entered against me. And I said, we can't do anything then. So he shot himself in the foot, but it wasn't our failure. We told him what to do. He just didn't listen to us. So from that point on, we strongly discouraged having a US connection to the offshore trust in any way, shape, or form. Okay, because clients just won't listen to you. If everything's offshore from day one, then it's like set it and forget it.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense.
Have
And
to think about it again.
yeah, no, it's leading them along the path, right? Like, this is how to think about this. This is how we're going to be doing this, and then they just don't even question it. Well, that's very clever. Well, the flip side of that obviously is success, and it sounds like you've had a lot of good success for your clients. What's one of the most, let me just say, in your legal practice, one of the things you're most proud of, right? And it could just be, your consistent rate of win. It could be one client came to you with a problem that somebody else had totally botched. But what's something that you're particularly proud of? One of your biggest successful moments in your legal career, Howard?
Okay, Patricia and I developed a strategy in conjunction with some offshore providers, which is a very effective means of protecting real estate. Since you can't move real estate offshore, the next best thing is to make it not worth going after for a creditor. And so we developed a strategy maybe 30 years ago, which when push came to shove, was successful against the United States Securities and Exchange Commission in a very nasty case. So that's a sales point that we use for that strategy to this day, that it's been
Wow.
successful against the United States government.
Well, that's the main one, right?
Yeah,
If you're going to be
don't get
successful against
that.
anyone,
Yeah.
that's the proverbial feather in your cap. Well, let me ask you this, because you also mentioned that you deal with a lot of occasionally fallout from newer people who think they know what they're doing and they cause problems, and a client comes to you. What's one of the most absurd things that a client has brought to you, other than the Mexican standoff we were talking about earlier? Or what's one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your legal practice slash asset protection practice?
Well, some of the newer people that do this, sometimes they get their trust forms from the offshore trust companies. Okay. And those are what I refer to as bare bones forms. First of all, the offshore trust companies do not purport to have any expertise in our tax system. And as a result of that, those offshore trusts provided forms never have US tax provisions in them, which are necessary, okay, to avoid a big problem for a client. In many cases, the client would set up the trust and it would be a completed gift for US federal gift tax purposes when the client really didn't intend to make a completed gift. Okay, that's a technical term. Okay. And it ends up using up your gift tax exemption where you didn't necessarily want to do that. And those kinds of things could happen when the trust company provided form is used. So a person doing this type of planning like we do has to have an extensive tax background, US federal tax background, even though we don't necessarily do tax planning with these trusts because they don't save any tax and they don't cost any tax, but they have to be properly structured so as not to screw up the client's estate and gift tax world. Okay.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
I hope I answered the question that you asked.
No, I think so. I think so. And this is a newer area for me to really think about. So sometimes getting my head fully around the matters at play is it's not the same as, when I deal with an
Right.
attorney that does, I've had 100 attorneys on this podcast that do family law or that do personal injury law. And so the questions in those situations are sometimes a little simpler. This is a very unique skill set that you have. And so I just kind of want to dive into it. Well, let me ask you this, because this might help people that are listening to this. Someone comes to you guys and they want to use your services. I'm sure they come into your office with some misconceptions. What's one of the biggest misconceptions people bring into your office about what you do, what you can do, what you can't do for them, if that makes sense?
Misconceptions. Well, it's all over the across the board. Sometimes they think they can still have control over their assets, and like a newbie attorney in this area might want to capitulate to that request of a client, but that kind of thing can get the client really jammed up and end up with them incarcerated for civil contempt.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, because the client, sometimes the client thinks they should still have control of the assets, which is like absolute no. Okay. They have to understand that they can only be a discretionary beneficiary of the offshore trust, meaning there's no real property interest that they have in their trust that can be grabbed by a creditor here in the United States. And the way an attorney gets them to accept that is by having the experience and qualifications that we have, as opposed to being somebody who was, handling divorces the year before.
Hmm.
Follow? So,
Yeah,
and that's often the case. And so, you know, with our experience and qualifications, they have confidence in what we do. It's just like if you were going to have a complex medical procedure performed. You want the person that does it every day and has been doing it every day for a very long time, as opposed to somebody who just graduated from medical school. And
absolutely.
there you go.
100%. So one question people might have, and I'm sure they probably bring this question to you, is how do they access their funds? Like they come to you because they want to protect what they have,
Yeah.
but then you say that they don't have control over what they have. So where's the rub, and what happens if they need that money down the road? What is the process for getting their money? Is it it's protected but they can never use it? They can use it but only a little bit of it. How does that play out for the average person who has no concept of this?
Okay, so really good question you just asked. No, they definitely, if you recall, I said they are discretionary beneficiaries of their trust. That means it's up to the trustee whether, if, and how much they get as a distribution from the trust. Having said that, the trustee understands very well that it's their money.
Hmm.
Okay. And as long as the client makes a request to the trustee, which is being made of their own free will, the trustee will accede to their request, although the trustee does need also the consent of the trust protector company. If you recall, I mentioned there's a check and balance arrangement. So as the bottom line is if the client is asking for something of their own free will, they will get the distribution. Just
Gotcha.
that simple. But if the client says, trustee, I've been ordered by the court to request that you send back everything in the trust, the trustee is going to say no.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's, again, that
That's
highlights,
what
I
you
think,
want.
well, that's exactly what you want, right? That highlights why this is set up the way that it is. When somebody accesses those funds, what does the tax look like? Is there tax when they send it off initially and put it in the trust? Is there tax when they receive it from the trust? How does that play out, or is it all because it's been taxed in the past? It's just money that they get. How does that play out?
The trust for federal tax purposes doesn't exist. Okay.
Okay.
It exists for property law purposes, which is the important thing. But putting money into the trust is not a taxable event. Getting money out of the trust to the person who put it in is also not a taxable event. However, if, for example, parents set up a trust and a distribution goes to one of the children, that would be a gift tax reportable event where they might use their annual exclusion, depending on the size of the distribution, or they might use some of their lifetime exemption. Okay, gift tax exemption, but no income tax effect at all. We say we use the expression that the trust is income tax neutral. Doesn't cost any income tax, doesn't save any income tax, but there are information reporting requirements to the Internal Revenue Service, which are very strict. And as long as you follow those rules, there's no issues with the IRS.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. And again, it's just a new area for me. So, and I think a lot of my listeners, this is an area they've never really considered. But I'm sure at least a fraction of them, this is probably an area that they're interested in. They've got assets they want to protect. So it's good to know. So, what jurisdictions do you usually establish offshore trusts in? Why do you choose those jurisdictions? And what kind of due diligence do you conduct on offshore trustee companies before working with them?
Okay, before we get into that, I just wanted to say one thing.
Oh yeah, please.
When we're engaged by a client to implement an offshore trust for them, we provide them with a detailed federal tax compliance memorandum document, which is about 28 pages long for their accountant, so nobody gets in trouble. We've seen time and time and time again that newer lawyers who purport to do this type of planning do not provide federal tax advice to their clients, which is malpractice at the very least. Okay. Now, to your question, we only set up these trusts in the Cook Islands. The Cook Islands is a British Commonwealth jurisdiction in the South Pacific, used to be part of New Zealand until 1984 when it became independent of New Zealand. It's still very closely tied with New Zealand. Families have families in both countries. Um, so the Cook Islands decided they needed to make some money to support themselves. So they they enacted in 1984 the International Trust Act. They became independent in 19 I don't want to say 82 or whatever, but they enacted the International Trust Act in 1984 as a means of generating revenue for the country. Okay, and it was a very unique thing at the time. People had been setting up offshore trusts in jurisdictions such as the Channel Islands, and they worked sort of just because they were far away. But the Cook Islands legislation was very pro-client, anti-creditor legislation, and that's what got the Cook Islands the reputation that it has. And it's also been through the trial by fire, if you will. They've had litigation there. They've thrown the United States government out of court twice. No other jurisdiction can say that. And the reason
Wow.
for that is the Cook Islands gets no financial aid from the United States, which seems like every other country in the world does. And they have no treaty with the United States, which would require them to enforce any kind of judgment of a court of the United States. So that's why we use the Cook Islands. They have a track record which is real. And the due diligence that we performed before we ever set up the very first trust in the Cook Islands, we went there, met with the trustee companies, met with the financial institution that we do business with over there. And since that time, and of course, did our due diligence. Since that time, we've returned 21 more times. So we've been there 22 times total, and occasionally renew our due diligence each time we go. Most recently, we were there in April of this year.
Gotcha. And I was looking at your website. Looks like you guys go there about you've been there about 22 times. I see Howard and Patricia's 22nd visit to the Cook Islands is on your website right now.
Right, right.
So very important question. If someone were to visit the Cook Islands, where should they go? Where are the great places in the Cook Islands to hang out?
Well, you really only you want to go to Rarotonga, which is the big island, and that's where the trust companies are. And very often tourists will go to Aitutaki, which is about a 45-minute plane ride from Rarotonga, and it's like very secluded. It's got a very romantic lagoon where you could do snorkeling, etc. We've been there as well. Um, but Rarotonga, you could stay there for a week and have a very nice time. The food, if you know what restaurants to go to, is excellent. The accommodations, are excellent. Again, if you know where to stay, there's no chain restaurants there whatsoever. There's no chain hotels there at all. Okay. There was an attempt decades ago by, I think it was the Sheraton
Hmm.
hotel chain to build a place. They built a place, but it
Never took
never
off.
was finished. Okay. And now they're using it to house people, workers that come there to work in the Cook Islands. But yeah, there's a lot to do. There's snorkeling, kiteboarding. We don't do any of that because we usually go for business meetings, but there's exploring that you could do on Rarotonga. That's very nice. We used to do that every time we go, but we pretty much know the the island very well now. You could drive around the big island in about 40 minutes, in circumference. It's not that big. The entire population of the country is about 15,000 people.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But I will tell you this, I've always been a trust lawyer before I even did offshore trusts, and I've never dealt with more competent trustee companies than the ones in the Cook Islands.
Wow.
Just
I mean,
that's
that's amazing. That really is that's 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 crazy. Do you ever take clients down there to visit the companies? Do they go with you? Is that a selling point?
yeah, we have actually had a couple of clients go with us who loved it. Okay. Yeah, it's very different. Okay. For example, there isn't a traffic light in the entire country, a red, green, yellow traffic light.
Yeah.
And only recently did they start putting street signs up. You had to know where you were going to get there,
Huh.
particular where to turn to get to a
Yeah.
particular location. So yeah.
I'd heard Rarotonga described years ago as like all of the beauty of Hawaii with none of the commercialism, and it sounds like that really is exactly what it is. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful
maybe
tropical,
Hawaii 50 years ago
yeah,
or more.
a pre industrialized, pre
Yeah.
commercialized Hawaii. Well, Howard, can you tell me about your success rates? Does this ever fail? Is there ever a problem that comes up? And how do you handle a situation where after one of these is implemented, a client's needs change, or is that ever an issue?
We've never had a creditor reach one penny that was held in the offshore trust. It's just not possible. And it's a very simple reason that it's not possible. And this is a big if the structure is properly set up, no court in the United States will have the ability to reach the trust. There are only two ways that a creditor can reach trust assets. They have to bring their lawsuit in a court which has jurisdiction over the trustee. Jurisdiction means being able to tell the trustee what to do. Or they have to bring their lawsuit in a court which has jurisdiction over trust assets, in which case the court would just seize the assets to satisfy the creditor's claim. So, if the trust is properly set up, it will have financial accounts offshore, either in the Cook Islands or in Switzerland, usually. And for example, under Swiss law, in order to grab an account in Switzerland, assuming there's no criminal aspect to it, because we do very stringent due diligence to make sure that none of that slips through the cracks. But in a civil matter under Swiss law, for a creditor to reach the account, they have to bring their lawsuit against the owner of the account. And in trust law, the owner is the trustee
Mm.
legally. So they have to bring their case in the Cook Islands. And They so the U.S. court can't do anything. They have to actually go to the Cook Islands and hire lawyers in the Cook Islands to bring the case against the trust. And we've had litigation in the Cook Islands where I would say to you, very few other lawyers have. And no creditor was successful because in our trust documents, we build in an escape hatch. So if you recall, I mentioned earlier that the trust protector company, which is located in a different country, can remove and replace a trustee with or without cause.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example of a case. The creditor goes to the Cook Islands. This was a very hotly contested divorce case. The spouse goes to the Cook Islands, hires lawyers there. They immediately get a restraining order on the Cook Islands trustee and the small bank account that was in the Cook Islands. It was like $10,000, but the larger account was in Switzerland, about $4 or $5 million. The protector was notified. The protector company immediately removed the Cook Islands trustee and appointed a trustee in another country, which took over the Swiss account and continued the trust. At that point, the creditor was in the wrong country. Okay, because the Cook Islands had no more connection to the trust. So they had to start all over again in another country, and they ended up having to settle. That's the bottom line, because the trust can continue to move. And it's analogous to this. Okay, suppose General Motors trustee, the treasurer of General Motors was fired. A new one's going to take his place or her place the next day. So this
Right.
is like a new trustee company taking the place, and our documents provide for that eventuality or possibility. Okay, whereas I would say no one else's do.
Wow. I mean, that's again, that just
Very
shows that you've been doing
sophisticated.
this for a while and you know what you're doing and you've prepared for basically all the contingencies. Um, how much is needed to do something like this? Is this something that somebody with a few $100,000 should look into? Is this somebody with a few $1 billion should look into? And when this money, and this is purely my ignorance here speaking, but I'm sure that people have this question, is this 100% purely just a protection? Like it's like putting your money in a lockbox where no one can touch it, but it's not going to grow. Are there ways to grow a trust and still make it do something like yield interest?
Yes, of course, of course. I'm sorry, I have to clarify that. The money in the Swiss account doesn't just sit there. It's usually invested in anything. It can be U.S. securities, it can be U.S. Treasury bills, it can be foreign securities, anything that you or I could invest in this country and more. Because there are certain foreign securities that you and I can't buy directly. We would
Hmm.
have to buy American Depository Receipts, ADRs, they're called. Whereas the trust, being a foreign entity, can directly and more efficiently purchase those foreign securities if that's what the client wants. Okay, so yes, the trust can grow. And I forgot what the first part of your question was.
How big
Oh,
is
how
too big or
much?
too little? Yeah. Is there a certain amount that's
Okay.
needed? Is there a certain amount where it's just like, oh, this you have too much, it's not worth it, or we should do three of these instead of one of these, or just I'm sure people have those questions.
We have clients with as much as $10 billion in their offshore trust and clients with a few $100,000. But having said that, our typical client has a couple of $1 million
Mhm.
liquid, meaning cash and or publicly traded securities outside of IRAs. Because IRAs, we have a special strategy that's probably beyond the scope of this podcast, that we have a special strategy to protect IRAs in states where they're not adequately protected.
Gotcha. Well, it's
And
good for people to
they
know
are.
that. So if you have an IRA, it sounds like Howard and his wife would be able to help you with that as well. Just in a way, again, that's beyond the scope of this particular podcast, which is totally fine. Um, I had another question that was based on that, and I just lost it as well. You chase
Welcome to
two
the
rabbits,
club.
you catch neither. That's how it goes, right? Um, oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's like right there. Shoot. It'll come to me. It won't. Well, we're actually getting close to the end. I know you've got a hard stop in about 20 minutes, so I want to make sure I have enough time to wind down the podcast as well. So here's what I'm going to do in a minute. And if that idea comes back to me, I still might ask you. But
Okay.
here in a minute, Howard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you my three closing questions. And those questions, just to give them to you now so you can percolate on them, are the following. Number one, If I gave you my magic wand and you could change one thing about your firm, the way that it's run, the way people find it, whatever it happens to be, anything you want, it's a magic wand or genie lamp or whatever you have. What would you change about your firm and why? Number two is if we can go back in time and meet young Howard, maybe, 1974, fresh out of law school, and you're able to give yourself one piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself and why? And then number three, if I gave you my magic pen, and with this pen you could change one law that's on the books, or you could edit a law, delete it, or add a new law. There's not much ink left in the pen, but there's just enough to make one edit, one addition, or one deletion. What law would you change and why? While you percolate on that, we're going to jump back over and take a look at your site again. I'm talking with Howard Rosen of Dunleavy Rosen and Rosen. That is protectyou.com or weprotectyou.com. Very, very clever URL. A husband and wife duo with an incredible amount of experience doing asset protection, particularly offshore asset protection. And if you haven't already figured out just from this podcast, he clearly knows what he's talking about. He has a lot of experience. And if you have assets, particularly a large amount of them that need to be protected and invested, it sounds to me like he would be a great resource for you. You ought to at least talk to him and get a sense for what they can do for you. So again, please feel free to reach out to him. That's protectyou.com or weprotectyou.com. It is Howard Rosen and Patricia Dunleavy Rosen, husband and wife team, who are heading this up. And if you also want to go visit the Cook Islands, it sounds like they do a lot of visiting down there. So you might get a chance to tag along and get the insider view of all the really great places to visit down there. Before we come back and answer those questions, we're going to jump over and read our last sponsor. That sponsor is Rank with News. Is not being featured in the news on a regular amount of time costing your business visibility and credibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google is more about dumb luck than it is science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Business Insider, Forbes, Bloomberg, AP News, etc., and to see those articles ranking nationally, locally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people are actually looking for? What else would you even need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and permanently. This is like guaranteed SEO, search engine optimization, on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business, visit rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. And since we're not living in the old school days of Yahoo, when you could just submit your site and take over the first 20 pages, I think Rank with News for a lot of our listeners out there is a wonderful resource that a number of them have actually taken advantage of. So, all right. So jumping back into our conversation here, Howard, I give you my magic wand. And with this magic wand, again, you can change anything about your practice, big, small, whatever it happens to be. What would you change if you could change anything about the current way that your law firm runs?
Nothing. I mean, Patricia and I have been running this firm the same way since 1991. Actually, yes, since 1991. So apparently we like it. So
Yeah.
we don't need to hire associates. And we have one assistant who helps us, and that's it. We like the way it's run. It's very in with our lifestyle.
Gotcha. Well, that's amazing that you've built that. I'm sorry. The correct answer was now you get a beautiful office in Rarotonga, right? That's just there, and you don't even have to pay for it. That was the correct answer. But
Oh, okay.
no, that's really wonderful. I mean, honestly, the fact that you're like, there's nothing I would change. My firm is doing everything I want it to do. We have a 100% success rate. Like, my goodness, like I'm envious. That's amazing. It really is. It's fascinating. So, well, let me ask you a question number two then. Question number two: you go back in time, and without breaking the space-time continuum, if you're big into sci-fi stuff, you're able to go up to yourself, young Howard, and give him just one or two sentences of advice. What advice would you give yourself, and maybe by extension, somebody fresh out of law school these days?
It's I got to where I am by living the life that I've lived, and I wouldn't really want to change anything, except I wish I had met my wife earlier. Okay, so we would have spent more time together, but that's all I really can't think of anything. I, as far as giving advice to a young lawyer, you know, learn your stuff before you speak,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
that's fair.
know what you're talking about. So,
No, it's totally fair. All right, well, question number three. I have a magic pen. This pen is from DC Drug, which is actually a small drugstore in Doniphan, Kansas, run by a friend of mine, doniphandrug.com. I'm going to give him a free shout out because this pen must have had some sort of a chemical spilled on it, and it's got this miraculous ability to change laws. Unfortunately, the ink is almost gone. So if I loan you this pen, you can only make one change, Howard. But again, you can strike a law from the books, add a new law, or edit a law. Is there a law that you would strike, edit, or change?
you mean one that has to do with my practice?
So this can be dealing directly with what you do, or it could just be getting rid of income tax or parking tickets. I mean, it could be anything, big or small. What would you change?
Oh God, it's such, I need
Unlimited freedom, but
this
limited
one.
ink.
I needed more time to think about this one because I didn't realize, as far as my practice goes, it's gotten more difficult over the years because of the stringent due diligent requirements of the financial institutions. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and I guess in a real sense, it's necessary to have these things. So it kind of bothered me that people in general don't like change,
Yeah,
right? And I'm a people, so I don't like change. But I realize the necessity for these stringent due diligence requirements, and it keeps everybody safe. So
yeah.
I can't. And as far as my practice goes, I'm happy with the laws that we have, even though some of them are a pain in the you know what. So because they need to be there in place.
Yeah. Well,
As
they make for an ecosystem that allows you to thrive in your practice, it sounds like, in a way that other people maybe don't even understand. So
Yeah,
it actually makes you guys the big fish in the little pond, so to speak.
yeah. I,
So.
I I really can't give you, and I'm sorry, I just can't give you a better answer than that for that question.
All right, well, then I'll just take
I'm
the
a
pen and get
dud.
rid of income tax. There we go.
Okay.
Well, Howard, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me on the podcast and my listeners. I always like to let my guests have the final word. Are there any last words of wisdom, parting thoughts, or any ideas that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Just that if you have any kind of question, feel free to call our office, any asset protection question. We will not charge for a consultation over the phone or in person.
That was my question, actually, is what's the process of onboarding a new client? How do they come to you? Is there a fee to get started? Like all of those things, but you can just keep
Yeah,
going.
we don't charge for consultation. We used to, but I want people to hear my message. Okay. So, and very often it falls on deaf ears. They look for the inexpensive route.
Mhm.
You get what you pay for in this world, and it's
Yeah.
particularly true with the professional. You want experience and qualifications, and no other law firm matches ours in this arena of asset protection.
That is one heck of a bold claim, but I think it's backed up entirely by reality. So
Yes.
that's awesome. Well, Howard, again, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me and my listeners today. I've learned a little bit on this podcast, and my favorite part about doing this podcast is just learning something new that I don't know about. So I absolutely love that. For those of you listening online, this has been the Attorney Post. I have been chatting with attorney and CPA Howard Rosen of Dunleavy Rosen and Rosen, the law firm that bears his name. Again, you can visit them online at protectyou.com. As always, though this podcast does deal with a lot of legal issues, it does not constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter you need help with. However, if you need asset protection, particularly offshore asset protection, it sounds like Howard and his wife would be a wonderful resource for you. And I think you should definitely at least reach out, talk to them, figure out, if what they're doing would make sense for you guys. Because again, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So you need, at the very least, take what you can and know your rights. As far as the podcast goes, if you're listening to us on any of the podcast repositories, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, etc., please feel free to rate us, like us, whatever they let you do on those podcasts. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment down below. subscribe to the channel. But the number one thing you can do to help this podcast grow is simply this. If you know somebody who would benefit from the information found in this podcast, please share it with them. Because again, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any, and the same thing goes for them. Help them get the knowledge they need to protect themselves, protect their assets, so that they can live their best life and you can live yours. Until next time, this is Justin West with the Attorney Post signing off. Thank you for listening, guys, and have a wonderful day.